joining Charlie, Kelly, and I, it is the head coach of our Philadelphia Flyers, Rick Tocchet. Rick, thank you so much for making the time this morning.
Good music. That's good warm-up music.
Right? Wasn't bad. Wasn't bad.
It's getting me cranked
Amped
up.
up,
Let's
right?
go. Love it.
So, Rick, it's draft weekend, and head coach of the team. I'm just interested with this sort of thing. Do you want to be involved, hands-on, and if not the decision-making process, at least have some information? Or are you more of a let me know when they get here kind of guy?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think you always try to stay in your lane. I'm the head coach. You got scouts, management, but Jonesy and Danny wanted me to watch a little bit of video. You watch the Nesbitt and you watch Martone and Brady Martin, all these guys. So it's not like I watched a ton, but I did watch enough to get a feel. But these guys, I mean, they see them every day. They're meeting their parents. They're talking to them every day. So as a coach, you got to stay in your lane. But they know the kind of players that we all kind of agree on what we like. And grabbing, like I said, grabbing a Martone who's like a Chuck Perry type, and then Nesbitt, a tall centerman, lanky, good skill. Those are the types of attributes that you try to win in the NHL.
Going into, you mentioned about Danny. Obviously,
Yeah.
you know Keith Jones as well, really well. One thing that they've talked about from the jump, and this starts from the top, from Dan Hilferty, is the importance of collaboration. They talk about it as being like a triumvirate with the coach, with Jonesy, and with Danny. How do you envision the interactions between you and Danny and Jonesy in terms of making decisions for the good of the franchise?
Yeah, for me, I've been around the block. Obviously, been in different organizations, head coach, assistant coach. Even as a player, but more on the management side with coach, communication's huge. Like, you got to have the conversations. You got to constantly talk about it. Stick with the plan. Don't get me wrong. There's going to be some arguments. And I think to win a Stanley Cup, I'm fortunate as a coach and as a player. There's always been whether it's not a controversy, but argument or something that you got to have it. So I think that's important. Even with Danny and Jonesy spent a lot of time with them last month about their plan and stuff like that. I mean, there's a lot of back and forth, but we're all in agreement. But it's good to have those debates. I mean, that's how you get better.
You mentioned Danny and Jonesy. You've had professional relationship with them for a long time. I would love to know, what was a young Danny Briere like as a teammate? You played with him a little with the Coyotes.
Yeah.
What was that experience like, and how did it inform your decision to come here?
Well, he was a great kid, and he's a great man. He was a man now, but back then, wide-eyed kid. Good skill, smaller, but he was a sponge. He was really close became really close with Shane Doan, one of his close buddies. A guy you want to root for, but he was a good player. He was a good. I remember doing the broadcast for Comcast when the guys went to the finals, and it was at 10.
Yeah.
And I remember that whole playoff run. He scored some big ass goals for the
Sure
Flyers.
did.
I mean, 2-2, 8 minutes left. Those goals, or power play when you need one. So, but seeing him as a general manager and knowing him as a young kid on my line, like it's an incredible transformation, because he's very methodical. He's a communicator, but he's got a little savvy in him. I could tell, we'll be talking. He'll, one of the GMs will be calling, "I gotta grab this," and you can hear that, he's confident in what he's doing. So, really impressed how he's evolved.
Rick, I want to ask you about the coaching staff.
Yeah.
So you guys have announced the assistants. If you wouldn't mind, could you go into what the roles are going to be, and then also, why? And I mean, obviously, it wasn't just your decision, but why you feel like this is the right staff for you.
Yeah, I'm a huge listen. If you don't have good assistant coaches, you're dead as a head coach. I don't care if you're Scotty Bowman or who you are. You need assistant coaches, and I think that's even evolved even more. Say 15 years ago, I feel the assistant coaches. You might have to hire a guy better than you at something. You really do. I was fortunate when the Jack Adams 2 years ago in Vancouver. If I don't have my staff, no chance. And plus that's a team award. It's a group award. It's not an individual guy. So. Jay Verde, I had him in Arizona. He was a Tucson coach, the minor league coach. I brought him up during COVID, so he hung around with us, and I thought he was outstanding. We're lucky to get him off Detroit. Then you got Yogi, who I had in Vancouver. He was our skills coach when I got there, and I promoted him. And I thought he was outstanding. He ran our power play. We had some injuries and stuff. We were still, I think we were like 13th, and I think he had a major, say in that. I brought Dylan Crawford over. He was our video coach, but he's also like an assistant coach. He's an out-of-the-box thinker, motivational. He'll show motivational videos to the players. His technical part of the game is excellent. And then Todd Reardon, who, if you look at his track record, he's won a couple Stanley Cups as assistant coach. He was head coach of Washington. I think he went to the All-Star game as a head coach. You look at, and he was here, Matt Niskanen, probably his best hockey his last 6 years of his career. He was excellent. You got Carlson in Washington, Letang. I mean, these are guys that I've talked to before. I reached out to somebody with Tom Wilson to ask about Todd. You do your background check, and Todd, Tom Wilson, who I love, he said he helped me a lot. Love the guy. So you like to get the player's point of view from him, and he came up, great for me. So, and then obviously Kim, the Dilly, don't know him that well, but just interact the last month, solid as can be. And then the video, Adam and Vinny, they're putting some projects together. So I'm really lucky. I love the staff. I think they're going to really help the players. I told the players that they're going to really help them.
So to break it down, Todd Reardon's going to be running the defense, obviously, and PK.
Yes.
And then Yogi will be doing the power play?
With Jay.
With Jay.
Jay will help him. Jay and Alex Tanguay ran the power play in Detroit. I think they were like top 5 2 years in a row. So I'd like to get Jay involved in that too. So, and then, Jay will help me in other aspects. He'll be the conduit with the analytics guys. Okay. I don't know what they did in the past, but Jay's really good at that stuff. And, with analytics, where we really want to get to the meat of it. And we write our own analytics, which I like. It's not we're getting, where do they get it now from sports? I don't know. I can't even know where they get it.
They have different. No, the different places where they get the data.
But I think it's important that you do your own analytics. What's important to be hard to play against and stuff like that. And Jay's going to help me with that. So, and then other roles and stuff like that.
And then Dylan Crawford will be doing more video.
So Dylan is like kind of our project guy. I'm every day I'm not the most organized guy where I write all these notes and stuff. And this is where Dylan's there. So I could be we were talking about in Vancouver about being selfless, right? And I don't know if you ever seen the Beckham on Netflix series.
No.
Where he actually gets hurt and there was a guy that never played and he ends up scoring 2 goals. It's a great, I remember I watched it the night before and I was telling Dylan in the morning, after practice, he clipped it down. He goes, talk, I got it ready to go. You want to show the players? And I'm like, what? And so we showed the players and it impacted, we won about 4 or 5 games in a row. I'm not saying it was because of that, but that's where Dylan's ahead. That's where Dylan, I'll say something or I've watched or what I see on TV or something. I like to have that message to the players, and he's already got it. So he's one of those guys outside the box thinker.
So I think one of the reasons why fans are so excited about you coming on at this particular moment is that this is a team that's really, I think, ready to turn a corner and start kind of putting the pedal down and start, turning into a team that's really going to make some noise in the Eastern Conference. As you kind of settle in and you take a look at this roster, are there any of these players that you're super excited to get to work with and kind of shape?
Yeah, there's quite a few guys. I can name the whole roster. Because you look at the roster and you look. I want to see a Jamie Drysdale take a Cam York. What are they? Can they get to the next level as a defenseman? That's why I brought Todd in. I think Todd's going to really help their development and the other guys. And you just go down a list. Obviously, Sanheim, I had him in 4 nations. In the summer before, I think they had him like 10th or 11th on the roster of making the team. And I remember talking to Jonesy, and we played you guys twice early in the season. I mean, this guy was playing great. And so he climbed the ladder, did a great job for his 4 nations. So, I mean, look at that guy. Can he be one of the top 2 or 3, 4 or 5 defensemen in the league? Yeah, I really believe he can have it. Owen Tippett's a guy I like to get my hands on. Big guy, can skate. Now we got to get him to play a give and go game, that type of game. Obviously, Michkov is a talented kid. We got to get the puck in his hands in certain situations. Zegras, obviously TK had him in the 4 nations. I mean, I could go down a list. A lot of people around the league talk about Cates a lot. He's made some noise. And, I talked to Sidney Crosby after the World Championships. He told me, hey, you're going to love Forrester. He loved Forrester. So there's a lot of bright spots. there's a long way to go. And, like I said, before training camp, I got to think of another word than process. But we do have, when the players hit the dressing room or go into our buildings, that they know that they're taken care of with knowledge. We got their back, trust, and there's going to be accountability. And we got to maximize these guys' talents. So that's our job. So I'm looking forward to that.
For you,
Yeah.
because obviously you're coming into a new situation, and you're going to be giving every player a clean slate. You're going to be looking at them, but every coach, really every person in hockey, they have things they like in guys, things they like in players. What would you say are the traits that make a player, a Rick Tocchet guy?
Well, I call them staples. Like, I watched this on the ice. That's how you win. You watch how a guy changes. I know, maybe the average person doesn't really understand that, but like, if you look at the playoffs, there's about 3 games that were lost because of a bad change.
Yeah.
So changes are a big thing for me. Being creative and holding on to pucks. I think this team can be better at that. Offensively, don't give the puck up so quick. Don't throw it away. Guys on your back, it's okay. If you look at all the great players, when they get it, when somebody's on their behind them, they never get rid of it, right? Yeah, okay, you're confronted, give and go game. I think there's certain things of that. This team, right from September, I want these guys to hold on to pucks. I don't want them to get rid of pucks. I want us to attack the blue line with speed, obviously. And so this is a good rush team. I think they're, you might know more than I think they're a top 10 rush team.
Yeah.
But one of the worst possession teams offensively. So we got to flip the script. I don't think you have to be a super rush team to win a Stanley Cup, but I think you got to have the puck in the offense. You look at Florida; they're the benchmark back-to-back Stanley Cup champs, right? What do they do well? They hold on to pucks down low.
Yeah, they break teams down.
They break teams down. All of a sudden, third period, you're gassed because they had the puck all night. A la Edmonton, game 5 and 6, there was no contest because of Florida.
Rick, I think it's pretty obvious you're excited to get to teaching here, excited to get started, but the rumors were you basically had your pick of jobs. There was a number of teams interested, and you have the ties to Philadelphia, maybe a little unfinished business here as well, but what made it so appealing that you chose the Flyers?
Yeah,
because it can't be working with Jonesy.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said before I did the press conferences, now you're walking the plank. I love that. I think what sold me, obviously, I had some opportunities to go to other places, but Danny and Jonesy spent a lot of time, and we talked about the plan. Where we're going with this, and obviously this year a lot of draft picks, next year a lot of cap space. So with the nucleus of guys, do we have a shot at some of the big time free agents? Maybe. So I just like the fact, and honestly, coming back home, I mean, it's hard not to go down the street and you see an origin, the Flyer hat or something like that, because it brings back a lot of memories. I was here in the 80s and 90s and the early near the end of my career, 2000s, and it's an unreal building to play in. The fans are, I've seen it every generation. And they're starving for a winner, and to be part of a solution to bring the winning tradition back here, it'd be incredible. And I love, a lot of friends still here. It's a great place to live. I mean, it's you're an hour, 2 hours from everywhere. I mean, there's a lot of perks, right? Yeah. And the organization. I mean, I've just got here, and just the people I've met, the department heads and stuff like that. You can tell everybody's just ready to go and turn this thing around.
What's your approach to handling goaltending? Are you kind of a, Dilly's got it kind of guy, or are you more hands-on than that?
Yeah, no, it's a good one. I'm a hands-off guy to a point. The attitude to me is the goalie. A lot of times, goalie coaches like, let the goalies are different. No, they got to be part of the team, and they got to have mental toughness. They might let 3 goals after the first period, but you don't let that 4th goal in. It's sometimes you get goalies like, it's not my night. They let the 4th one go, and you end up losing 4-3. Well, I don't know the goalie situations in the sense that over the years, but the attitude definitely is something that I like to be involved with when it comes to technical, and and I'll rely on Dilly. Hey, should we play this guy? I think today's NHL, you can't play goalies either. You got to be careful. Back in the day, Brodeur, those guys played 65 every game.
Yeah, 70 a year, yeah.
Now it's different. So you got to be calculated on how you get your other goalies in.
One thing that that was really interesting to me in the lead up to the to when you got hired was all of the star players that swear by you. You have Quinn Hughes, Phil Kessel. Why do you think that high end talented guys really like to play for you?
Yeah, I use the word partnership a lot. And you got to earn their trust. I remember when I took the job in Pittsburgh, a guy like Sidney Crosby, I think he's the benchmark, right? How do you deal with him? So I knew I'd have to back off and just earn his trust. And he would throw little things at me because he was testing me, right? And then obviously we have a great relationship now, but he's one of those guys. I remember being at dinner. It's 8:00 at night. I'm having dinner and I get a text. It's Sidney, right? Hey, did you see that San Jose power play face-off when this guy did this guy, when this guy did? And I'm like, and I'm just biting into a steak, and I'm like, no, but I knew the next morning I better have an answer for him, right? And that's the sort of things that you got to be ready for. These guys, they test you. Quinn Hughes, will ask you questions about power play. Even got to know Connor McDavid in the Four Nations, same thing. So they like to have a voice, but they know I'm not scared to tell them either, like what I think. And I think you can't treat those guys with kid gloves, but you got to also know that these guys are smart guys. So it's more of a partnership.
You've obviously you got to coach Sidney Crosby. You got to play and coach with Wayne Gretzky. Sure. There's something that like a characteristic that defines those types of guys, like something that makes them similar. You go, I've seen this before.
Yeah, great question. I can name before Mary Lemieux, all these guys. When the temperature is hot, when it's it's whether it's double overtime, whether it's whatever, you get called a bad call by the ref. There's a lot of stress going on. They're like this. They're very you don't see obviously they're intense. Don't get me wrong, but there's no panic. And I learned that from them because sometimes even a head coach early in my career, you're screaming at the ref. You're all over the map. You miss a line change because you're not focused. So from learning and still talking, still those guys being my Rolodex where I talk to them a lot, they give you a little calmness on the way you do things. So I think that's, to me, those guys, their calmness. Whether it's double overtime. I always tell the players, I don't care if it's double overtime or it's exhibition game against Jersey in September. If the play's there, make it. Like if it's a pocket play, just because it's double overtime, you just don't go, well, I'm going to rip it off the glass because the first period you didn't. If it's there, make it. And I think you have to have that temperament the whole year. And then when it comes to hopefully make the playoffs, when there's pressure moments, you can make those plays under pressure.
Rick, thanks so much again. Just one more quick question, and then we'll let you go. But really appreciate all the time you've taken with us. Obviously, going into a season, you're a competitive guy. You're going to say, I want to win the Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
But realistically, with where the Flyers are, what are your expectations for the upcoming season?
Yeah. Well, I think that everybody says that, hey, we got to win. We want to, I talked to Michkov the other day. He's like, I want to win. I want to win. I want to win. I get you want to win, but for me, my job is to maximize everybody. Can they play to their potential? That's how I'm going to get judged by. That's how our staff's going to get judged by. And the players crave it. When they come in, they want to be better. That means more ice time, more money, hopefully a championship, right? So we're all on the same page when it comes to that. But what are you willing to do? Are we an interested group into, hey, we want to win, we're interested in winning, or are we committed? There's a difference. And, I want a committed group. And then if you do the right things, usually you're successful. And so, I want to win, but I also know that I got to win my players over in the sense that they got to trust our staff for them getting better. And hopefully that works for us.
Well, Rick, thank you so much for the time. Man. Really appreciate it. And hope to do this again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Anytime.
Thanks again, Rick.
That is Flyers head coach Rick Tocchet joining us right off the bat this morning.